What's up, everybody? It's the Alex Leak and Friends NFL podcast. I'm your host, Alex Leak. We got my co-host, Bret, on the show. What's up, Bret?
Hey, how's it going, man? How you doing?
Good to have you back on. And we have a very special guest, former Michigan State Spartan and longtime two-time Super Bowl champion, New York Giant linebacker, Carl Banks. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Carl.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, it's an honor to get to talk to you. You played on some great teams. I'm a Michigan State fan. My co-host is a Michigan fan, so a little rivalry here.
Yeah, I see his Lions banner hanging up behind him.
Yeah, I'm up here in Fenton, up in Michigan, right by Detroit, so I gotta rep it.
Oh, you're a Fenton guy, huh?
Yeah, I noticed you were from Flint.
Yeah, I'm from Flint. Yeah, we played you guys a lot when I was in high school.
That's crazy. That's a small world that
Yeah.
how the connections you made there.
All right, let's get this thing started. For those of you that don't know, Carl Banks, a two-time Super Bowl champion with the Giants. He's also a member of the NFL 1980s All-Decade Team and the New York Giants Ring of Honor. Like Carl just mentioned, he was born in Flint and attended Beecher High School in Mount Morris, Michigan. Carl, what was it like growing up in that area of Michigan and playing high school football around there?
Well, it was, it was great, to be honest with you, because we had so many great athletes. And, if you can imagine a town of 100,000 people that has put out probably more athletes per 100,000 people than any city in the United States. So
Wow.
it was great. And, the thing about it is basketball was my first love. And, we were a pretty good basketball team, but there were some really, really, really good athletes there. So it was very competitive. Um, we brought out the best in each other. And, the interesting thing about it, if you allow me to go down this little basketball road for a second,
Yeah.
we just finished the 30 for 30 with the Michael Jordan Last Dance thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And people are, kind of comparing the two eras of today's basketball versus basketball when Michael Jordan played. And I tell people the biggest difference between eras is that they came through basketball a little differently than the players that are playing today. And it's not to diminish anything that we see on TV, but those guys all had to play high school basketball. They didn't go on barnstorming tours via AAU basketball, so they had to play in their local tournaments. Obviously, you had the McDonald's All-American and all of that, but a lot of those guys did it, just hard knocks basketball, and they had to really develop a complete skill set. But it's a different world now. I enjoy, all sports, NBA and football, but it's a different world right now. I wouldn't trade the way I learned to play the game of football with anyone. I think because it was not a position specialized situation where guys now train for their position and they're a one sport, they train via one sport or one set of techniques, where I had to learn to play a lot of different sports, and I think it lent itself to me being as complete a football player as I was.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You see a lot more athletes nowadays, like, generalizing in multi-sports. And I think you guys kind of like set the standard for that and got the ball rolling to like participate in multiple sports, and that will grow multiple areas of your game, all around player, all around athlete.
yeah. How big was? How as far as in that area for athletes per students, I guess, for the school, like was it just something that was more necessary, or just the fact that you were just able to do that and wanted to?
Well, it was an expectation because all of our coaches, they coach multiple sports too, so they wanted to make sure that you weren't just going to be a one-sport athlete. So you had to do something year-round, but it really does. It helped your body. And I look at some of the soft tissue injuries right now, and especially in football. And it's because the body is used to training one way, and your body reacts only to a certain style of movement. And I think when you can play multiple sports, your body adjusts to a lot of different types of movement. So, but listen, these guys are very good at what they do. I applaud them. I do encourage them to do more than just train for football, because your body, if you force your body to adjust, then it can respond a lot differently in different situations.
Now, coming out of high school, what was your college recruitment experience like? Coming up in Michigan, I'm a Michigan State fan, Bret's a Michigan fan. Did you look at both schools, and what led to you choosing Michigan State for your college education?
Well, my recruiting experience was pretty good. I was a blue chipper coming out of high school. And my biggest trip was when Barry Switzer recruited me to go to Oklahoma, and they were like coming off a national championship with Billy Sims and those guys. So that was a big plus for me. So I was recruited by all the Big Ten schools, but Michigan was just not an option for me.
Okay.
And the reason I chose Michigan State, and it was a kind of an unpopular choice because they were coming off of probation. But I had one conversation, and I said, I'm going to Michigan State. It was Magic Johnson. It's who I spoke to before I made my decision. And Magic and I knew each other from basketball. Actually, I attended his basketball camp for a couple of years, so we became friends. And he was aware of all the places that were recruiting me. And he said to me, I guarantee you will not have another experience as good as Michigan State. The campus is great. The people are great. They're going to treat you right, and you will not regret it. And I took his word for it, and I have no regrets whatsoever.
That's awesome.
Wow, that's a great story there.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bret.
That's something that you don't hear often.
Oh, and a funny story, Bret. So I ran into John Harbaugh's father, Jack. It was about 5 or 6 years ago. And he was a coach at Michigan at the time. And he recalls the story because they were very arrogant when they recruited me, and I was a hometown kid, and they didn't even want to offer me an official visit. It was just kind of like, you take it or leave it. We're Michigan. And so I told him I'll leave it. And then Bo Schembechler called me and said it was a big mistake. It was Terrell Burton who said that. And he tried to recruit me, but I was just over it. And so Jack Harbaugh tells the story of how they never let Terrell Burton live it down. I think his first name was Terrell, but his last name was Burton. Live it down that he treated me the way he did and didn't officially treat me like a blue chip recruit.
Wow.
And I made him pay every time I played him. I made him pay too.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
You did.
Bret, you got a question?
Yeah. I mean, as far as in your time at Michigan State, what was the biggest, or I guess I would say, where were you most eager to go back and play, like the atmosphere?
Well, keep in mind, we weren't very good the years that I was there. But I would say the place I loved to play the most was Notre Dame. You got a chance. We like to play them, but I loved going there to play them. It was great atmosphere. Ohio State was just different. Great crowd. The big house in Michigan. It's a cool place to play, but the crowd really doesn't factor in there because all the noise goes up and out of the stadium because the stadium is basically underground. and it's what, like 6 feet. The upper deck is like you can jump out the upper deck and land in the parking lot, not hurt yourself.
Right.
You were never intimidated going there. They were just a good football team, though. But Notre Dame was a place that I loved playing. Ohio State, I only got a chance to play them twice while I was at Michigan State, but it was quite a crowd there too. The Horseshoe.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's very cool insight. Now, while at Michigan State, you would become MSU's first non-kicker to be selected to first team All Big Ten 3 times. Quite an accomplishment. Only linebackers Percy Snow and Greg Jones have done it since. So great impact there at Michigan State, beating number 4 ranked Notre Dame in their house in 1983.
Yeah, how was that?
Oh, that was incredible. I always tease Mark Bavaro about that to this day. They were a powerhouse, obviously ranked number 4 in the country, but that was kind of a personal game for me too, because I had been around Greg Bell and Tony Hunter at a football camp that summer before. And boy, you talk about guys that were just so arrogant. I had a chip on my shoulder after I met those guys. I'm like, oh, I'm going to make these guys pay when we play them.
Oh, Notre Dame? No way.
Yeah.
So when you went to the NFL draft in 1984, there was also the USFL was a big option, and they were throwing around a lot of money and stealing big name players from the NFL like Jim Kelly, Steve Young, Herschel Walker, even Reggie White. Did you have any interest in the USFL, or were you straight to the NFL draft?
I really didn't. The Michigan Panthers did show a lot of interest, but I wanted to play on the big stage and play against the best in the world. And so instead of trailblazing, I wanted to make my mark in the NFL.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Bret.
You did. You definitely made your mark. I'm curious about the defense that you guys had there in New York. That was just so so I don't know that they were forced. Obviously, your front seven was incredible in the defense overall. But how was it, like, the fact that you guys, held opponents to 80-ish yards a game, and you were just so aware of what, or one step ahead all the time? Like, how was it being that dynamic of a defense?
Well, I mean, obviously we had the greatest defensive player in the history of the game in Lawrence Taylor. But I think the thing that made us so good is that we were fundamentally sound. And the beauty of our defense is that we were so simplistic in some of the things we did. We just were just really good and fundamentally sound. So we weren't going to make a lot of mistakes. We were a good tackling team. We were mentally tough. We were fast and physical. And the thing about it, our depth was so good. We had, a guy like Andy Haddon and Byron Hunt that were linebackers that I had to beat out to get into the starting lineup. And, both of those guys ran sub 4.5 40s. And so we had so many dynamic players on our defense that we could just interchange parts. And, a lot of people talk about, what Bill Belichick does with his defenses and giving you different looks. The reason he's able to do that, and we kind of helped him formulate that template, is because he made every linebacker know every position on the field.
Wow.
We were part-time defensive linemen, part-time linebackers, part-time safeties. We had to know, our linebackers had to know every linebacker position and the responsibility of every guy on the field. So when we put different players on, different player groupings on the field, offenses really didn't know what we were going to do because, Pepper Johnson could put his hand in the dirt and rush like a defensive end, or he could line up inside and move like a defensive tackle. We just had so many different configurations, and it was only because we all knew what, every position required of us. And so when Bill was drawing it up, he would just say, okay, you're going to be a defensive end on this play. Okay, you're going to line up on the nose tackle, and you're going to do this on third down. So it was what made us so good is that we were so fundamentally sound.
Damn, that's very cool. That's seeing going back and looking at the tape and stuff, seeing a young defensive coordinator Bill Belichick is so cool to me. And those defenses were so nasty, and he was a big part of that too. I mean, it's incredible. And
I see your understanding and what you were saying about knowing multiple positions now and being able to be versatile. That definitely ties into that there, and that makes a lot of sense how you guys were able to I guess pick and plug there for what worked wherever anybody was. That's hard to go up against as an offense.
Yeah, and the thing about it too is Bill gave us the latitude to even make our own adjustments on the field. So if he calls a defense and Lawrence saw something or I saw something or Pepper Johnson or Harry, we could switch responsibilities, on the drop of a dime, and then we'll just go over to the sideline and we'll tell Bill, this is what we did because we saw this.
mm-hmm.
And the reason we could do that, it wasn't like we were freelancing, but if we interchanged our responsibilities, we already knew what the other guy was supposed to be doing, so we wouldn't have a breakdown in our defense. So if I had to assume Pepper Johnson's responsibility, if he wanted to do something different, he just told me, and I automatically knew what his run responsibility was and what his pass responsibility was, and he knew mine. So it was a lot of fun playing in that system.
That's very cool. That seems like very good chemistry, very good coaching. That a lot of that goes into why you guys are so dominant. Playing in the 80s, in the late 80s, mid 80s, 90s, you're going up against some of the best running backs of all time. You're talking about Eric Dickerson in the playoffs, Walter Payton, Thurman Thomas. What was it like trying to tackle and trying to slow down these all-time great running backs?
Well, it was the ultimate challenge. We look forward to every single player we played against. The bigger the name, the harder we played. And I'll tell you, the one guy who doesn't get enough credit, who ended up joining our team, but
mm-hmm.
the guy who gave us the most trouble was O.J. Anderson.
Really?
He was a big, powerful, fast guy, and he gave your defense trouble because we were a big, powerful defense, but he would match our power with his power. We had Barry Sanders, I had Emmitt Smith, I had Eric Dickerson, Roger Craig, all of those guys. But the guy who doesn't get the credit he deserves, in my opinion, as an opponent, is Otis Anderson. I think, you stack him up pound for pound, he's the truth, man. He was really tough to go against, and he was the one guy that we really, him and John Riggins, and he was better than John Riggins from a skill set point of view. Those were the guys we had to worry about because OJ could catch it. He was a power runner, but he had speed. He had the athleticism of a small back.
Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah, that's I mean, those are players that you rarely see probably that, for a defense like that to struggle, that shows.
Well, I wouldn't say we struggle. We wouldn't outwardly struggle, but internally, he was a tall order. Just put it that way.
Yeah.
Trying to keep him under 100 yards was tough. Put it that way.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
And here's the one thing about Otis Anderson that he had this rare mindset that most running backs don't. Like the harder you hit Otis, the madder he got, and the tougher he ran. Like most of the running back, I would say the majority of the running backs that we played against that had any talent, they eventually succumbed to our defense. Otis would never succumb to us. We would beat him, and he would beat us back. And, that was the ultimate challenge because he was the guy who just would not back down.
The thing I remember about I watched the 1990 Super Bowl against Buffalo, I believe it was when O.J. Anderson was running and contact was about to come, and he wound up and hit the guy. It was
Yeah,
crazy.
he had a defensive mentality, man. When it comes to runners that were just tough-minded, he was that guy. He ran angry, he played angry, didn't want to be your friend during the game, and the harder you made it for him, the harder he would make it for you.
That's awesome.
Hey,
Go ahead,
bro.
bro.
Competitiveness makes you better.
Yep.
Bret, you got a question about the Super Bowls you wanted to ask?
I did. I was curious about as far as you guys playing in the playoffs. How was it going up against Joe Montana in that offense for the 49ers?
The interesting thing about playing San Francisco, even though they weren't in our division, they were almost like our division. As long as we were in the playoffs, we knew that we were going to eventually play them. And it was tough. Early in my career, they had our number. And then we figured out that we could not finesse a finesse team. So what we ended up doing is playing more physical, finding more ways to dismantle the West Coast offense, and having guys like Mark Collins on the outside and Perry Williams, both physical cornerbacks. What we were able to do is to really disrupt the timing of their offense with our corners, because Mark would take Jerry Rice and he would just play him physical the whole game. And John Taylor would be the same thing that Perry Williams would do. I would take their tight end and I'd bang them around because, the West Coast offense is about timing. And then we just wanted to punish Roger Craig as much as we could.
That's awesome. So we'll get you out of here on this. We know you got to go. But those 2 Super Bowl wins, what did they mean to you at the time? Some people get lucky to just play in 1 Super Bowl. Some people never get to play in a Super Bowl. You got to play in 2 and win both of them. What was that? What does that mean to, and what was that like?
It was the ultimate, to be honest with you, because, there are a lot of good players that, like you said, that never played in the game. And then those that played in the game, some didn't win it. I don't know what it's like to lose a Super Bowl. And the thing about Super Bowls is that, everybody, teams are heartbroken when they lose in the playoffs. But when you get to the final game and there's only one winner, then, and I'm not saying this in any kind of smug way, but you end up being the ultimate loser.
Yeah.
Because you're there, the other team's there, and there's going to be one world champion, and the other guy got all the way there just to lose it. And so it's that, in my opinion, is probably some of the toughest emotions a player could go through, is getting to a Super Bowl and losing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good players who that's unfortunate that it's happened to that never got them.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much for some of your time, Carl. It was awesome to have you on the show, and I would love to have you on again someday. This is great.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it again when the season starts and we can have a few more things to talk about.
Hell yeah, sounds good.
That sounds like a plan. We'll
All
get
right.
All right, have a good one, Carl. Thank you again.
Hey, Bret.
Yeah.
Go green.
Go blue.
I love it.
Take care, guys.
See you,
have a good one.
Thank you, man. All right, bye-bye.
Bye. Where's